I cannot believe. Hello, welcome back to All For United WSC, by the way. For those who, why I said I cannot believe. So while the intro was playing, I saw Barry flicked his camera off, and he's done a little change. I'm pretty sure you weren't wearing that before we came on in. So you've done a little switch over, a little quick change in the intro. So that's why I was laughing in terms of that intro, which is, to be honest, we kind of thought this day was coming, but a show that we didn't really want to be doing. But we said we would when these things are announced. So as it says in the title, for those of you here, if you've been living under a rock in the last kind of few years, obviously Katie Zelem has been officially announced today that she is leaving, has left Manchester United this week. When her contract expires on Sunday. We're going to dive into what this means, obviously, off the field, on the field. I'm going to give a little bit away in terms of what has gone on with this one. We're going to talk about future captains and things like that, because obviously big changes now on the field. Set pieces as well. Set pieces are going to change, and things like that in terms of who steps up potentially there. So we're going to get into all that. But first questions, as ever, in terms of, and I guess, Karis, I will start with you on this one, in just terms of, what's your thoughts on it, really, when you saw that this was announced a bit earlier on?
Yeah, I mean, it's really sad for a number of reasons, but the first obvious one being is that none of us have seen United Women without Katie Zelem. No one has. It's just like, it's very difficult to imagine it without her. I think if you look at every kind of key milestone that we've had in terms of like promotion, in terms of, first derby wins, FA Cup final, beating Chelsea, like every key match that you think about, she is there. It's very hard to imagine the team without her. I think she gets a lot of stick, or has got a lot of stick over the years from fans, from various players, various kind of people like in the industry, journalists and so on. And I think people have sometimes disregarded like just how key she's been to the team on and off the pitch. So yeah, really, really sad to see her go.
Yeah, I think that's definitely going to be a theme for this one. For those of you expecting a really positive and upbeat show, this is probably not going to be for you, because there's probably not going to be too much positive to be said on this one. And just while we're here, this is a positive, though. Donna, thank you for joining us. And some new commenters as well I've already seen in the chat already. It's great to have you in here. So yeah, get all your thoughts in. I'll bring those on screen as and when we go through it. Barra, throw it over to you then. There was a couple of people obviously mentioning you earlier on. Michael was straight in their very first comment of the day, earlier on, 3:10 in the afternoon. Michael put this, and not long after I set the stream, Michael was in there with thoughts and prets. There was a comment about you having a poem. I don't believe you've got a poem, have you, for this one? Oh, here we go. He doesn't tell me these things. It's a lie. So, yeah, what's your, I guess, just your thoughts initially, and then we'll dive into some of the specifics as we go through the show on this one.
Well, listen, I knew it was coming. And so because I knew it was coming, I didn't feel quite so bad today when it came out. I was more upset when I first heard the possibility that she might not be staying. Now that I know that she's definitely gone, I do feel incredibly sad. And it's an interesting one, because if we rewind it back to when Jackie Gronin left, there were a lot of people that were very upset about the fact that Jackie was going. She was a fan favourite. There were people that had felt the same about Vauderbay Reese. So, every person who supports football has players who they come across in their lifetime who are just ones that they absolutely adore for whatever reason it might be. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I would always keep my eye on Katie and see how she gets on. I will never wish her anything other than the best. But just the risk of sounding like a broken record, my biggest problem is the fact that this has happened again. And, the world at the moment is sitting there and talking about disrespect being shown to the women's team, which is effectively what this PFA thing is basically all about, is not showing the right respect in the right places. And I just think that if you can be a person who was there at the inception of the women's team in its new and current format, and this is how people say goodbye to you, when you are a player who was notoriously lambasted by her own supporters at times because of the fact she was never dropped, because of the fact she always played. I'm just gobsmacked that somebody like that, who was always seen as the spirit of United, almost the heartbeat of United, just the epitome of what it is to be a Manchester United player, along with people like Ella Toone, Millie Turner. I just think we're sort of left there, Leah Goulton as well being the other OG. I think we're just sat here now. I just feel sad that she probably knew at the FA Cup final. And now when you watch these videos back of them celebrating, you see almost things in their faces. When Lucia's, when she's off hugging May Letizia, when Zell's doing the same, and they go off their hugs, you can almost see it in their eyes. We know this is the end. You almost wonder if that was what it took, just that little bit extra. That's maybe why the Chelsea semi-final went as well as it did, because they were determined not to finish this season having not won something as a group. So, you know, I'm sad, and I'm sad because I think we are losing our best midfielder. And I know there's going to be people that disagree with that, but I'm allowed an opinion, so get back in your box. Just let me have it today, will you? Don't be sitting here shouting at me. Just for one day, can I please just have and not having a go at Auntie's, at Katie Zelem Day? Because let's be honest, I'm not entirely convinced I could take that. I would be a lot more raw than I normally am. But having said that, I think it is also very, very fair to say that no matter who you are, there will never be a player who is bigger than the club. And Manchester United will continue to go on and will continue to have our support. But the honest answer is I feel flat. You know, I've dressed up like this because I thought it'd be a giggle. And I'm hoping it's put a smile on some people's faces, because it is actually starting to choke me. So at some point, if I start turning red, I will have to undo the top button, because it's not a shirt that's really going to allow me to talk for much longer. But yeah, you know, we'll try and have a giggle as we get through it, and hopefully I won't cry.
Do you know what it reminds me of, and this is really off topic? It reminds me of a show years ago, like 2-3 years ago, and you came on in a suit. I think it was the anniversary show of the channel.
Pretty sure it was. Yeah.
It was boiling off. It was like 30 degrees, and you came on in a full suit.
Wasn't putting the jacket on. Probably break the back.
It reminds me of that, but yeah, no, I echo kind of what both of you said, and I think I said this on the TikTok live. I've literally just come off, and you know, knowing this was coming, it still doesn't make the day in terms of seeing it out there. And we're going to talk about some of the players' reactions as well, because I think a lot of the player posts are very, very telling on that one. So we will get to the player posts as well. I'll come back to my bit in a second in terms of what the timeline was, I guess, a little bit on this one. But I want to talk about today in terms of how this was put out. So, Keris, I'll come back to you on this one in terms of, we saw with Lucia, obviously she's done an exit interview and all these different kinds of things. Are you surprised and maybe a little bit annoyed? Because I think the genuine or the overwhelming, I guess, response to this is all we got really was a post and an edited video that, to be honest, I could probably put together if I had the time. Are you surprised that for a player that came back to play for us in the Championship, captain the side, did all these things, that's all we got today? Was literally just a post saying thanks, and that was it. No other comments until
absolutely.
an Instagram post out.
Absolutely. I mean, like, plenty of people have already pointed it out in the comments, right? The kind of, if the club knew this was coming, and if Katie knew this was coming, like, why wasn't there some sort of like send off, for instance, at Old Trafford on the last day of the season would have been the time to do it, or this sort of thing. The fact that there's not even, doesn't seem to be at the moment an exit interview, for me is really sad. Although, to be fair, like, I haven't even finished Lucia's yet because I just can't do it. So I started watching it last night after I'd been out for dinner with my friends and had like 4 glasses of wine. I got like 3 minutes in and I was like, no, I'm done. So in a way, it's quite good that she's not done it, because I don't think I could handle it. But yeah, it's really surprising in terms of the way that it's been announced. It feels like it's been very like quietly done, which is bizarre for a player who's so kind of synonymous with the club, and the club that it's been for the last kind of however many years it's been now, 6 years. She's been there for all of it. So for there not even to be a kind of exit interview is bizarre.
Yeah, and not only that, as Brooke has said there, feels like we've lost a family member. No award ceremony, obviously that got cancelled as well. No farewell at Old Trafford, obviously, and no exit interview as well. Like Barry, you briefly touched on it there in terms of the disrespect. To me, this is disrespect for a player that is, like I said, captain the side and all these things. Came back to us when she didn't really need to. She's a lifelong United fan, wanted to come back to the team in the Championship. She always said there was no team she was going to do that for. She came back to us when the team got reformed. And just to get a post that literally just says "Thank you, Zelem," and that's it. That's all we've kind of had today. And I know that I put an edited video out about kind of like a highlights and things like that. But that to me is worse than her actually leaving, I think.
Do you know what? Sometimes, Connor, it's difficult being me. They often say that social media and things like this are places where you put out there a facade of yourself, like a mask almost. You're different, and I'm not. You'll testify to that, Connor. The way that I talk to you and behave on here is the same way that I talk to everybody off the camera. But it is hard because I have other responsibilities. My other responsibilities, I work for a women's football team. I do have, social media. I'm incredibly careful what I put out there, and I spend hours deleting comments that I was thinking of writing out as I write them out. I tread a very fine line. I really do. And it's difficult for me because I was supporting Manchester United long before I got involved in the football game. It wasn't something that I ever necessarily thought I would do. And it's difficult because, 30 years ago, I was listening to Manchester United matches on the radio, and every time we'd score, the headphones would come off and I'd be running around the house, and my mum knew that we'd scored a goal because I was going absolutely mental and screaming and shouting and all of those sorts of things. And it's here. Being a Man United fan, you don't have a choice once you've done it. That's it. It's who you are. It's Manchester United. It's part of your being. It's part of your fibre. It's part of you. You don't pick another team. This is it. Once you've picked it, you're there with them. Through good, through bad, through ugly, through it all. That's what you are. And that means we say things sometimes because they come directly from our heart. And, yesterday I said some things that came directly from my heart. I believe I referred to certain members of the Manchester United hierarchy as not particularly pleasurable people. But that's anger. It's disappointment. Because you just can't treat people that love the club in the same way that you do like this. And that's what's hurting, because Man United under Alex Ferguson was a family. It was a group. And I know that the women's team initially was disbanded whilst Alex Ferguson was there. I'm not trying to claim that he was a particularly big part in the women's game. But what I am trying to say is that it was together. Manchester United under Sir Alex, it was always everyone against us. And at the moment, I just don't see that link between the fans and the club as it should be. And as it should be is us. We're all together. When people attack Manchester United, it's the fans that stand up and defend them. The media team can't come out there and start telling all the other fans, to bog off and all those sorts of things. It's us that do it. We're the ones that have the banter with the Liverpool fans. We're the ones that have to sit there and listen to Chelsea fans crow about the fact they're winning the league every single year. We're the ones that have City and Arsenal giving us all of that tripe. We're the ones that have to fight that. And now Liverpool. Because Liverpool have got above us as well. And we're the ones that fight that battle. And the very least that we ask for, having gone out there, and some of you week in, week out, travelling to LSB, giving everything you've got to support those girls. And the one thing we ask for, the one thing, is that you just don't mess about with our relationship with the players. I'm reading a book at the moment, a Jack Reacher book, and the whole thing at the moment they're talking about is you don't mess with the special forces. You don't mess with the fans. We're your lifeblood. We pay the tickets. We pay for you to have the job you have. If we don't come into our stadium, you don't have a product. If your players don't want to come to the club, you don't have a product. And if you're not providing us with players that we want to watch, you don't have what you need. So when I sit there and I do that as a fan, people are just going to have to forgive me, because I have loved Manchester United long before people came in here and bought this club. I was there when Michael Edwards owned it, you know? So I'm not having this. I'm not having a situation where people who've just come in because it's loads of money dictate to me how I support my football club and treat players that have loved this club in the manner that they have. What they have done this season, I'm afraid the only word I can use is disgraceful. It is nothing short of disgraceful. And whether you like Katie Zelem, whether you don't, whether you're a fan of Mary Earps or you're not, if she goes, whether you're a fan of Nikita, whether you're a fan of Lucia or not, whoever it was, I think we can all agree that our players and our fans deserved better than we got today.
No, I don't really know how to follow that. In terms of probably just adding a bit of context to what, in terms of on top of what you just said. Not that I don't think it needs it, but I think that's why I said I think it's worse than her actually leaving, because I tweeted this a bit earlier on, and I'll answer. I don't know whether they're going to be watching, but a couple of people replied to me saying, you know, Katie in her post said that she wanted a new challenge. Let me just be clear. The club have known, I think, for a while on this one. The option was that Katie was not going to be given a contract. That was a decision. Katie, I believe, wanted to stay here. The decision was made that she was not going to be given a new contract. Therefore, she's going out the door on a free. Someone asked me whether it was a decision Grace Clinton coming back. Grace has got nothing to do with the Zelem position in terms of Grace was coming back regardless. That decision was made a long time ago as well. And the stance is someone that she's not for sale. So as far as I'm concerned, if I've known about this for a long time, that she has been going, I know full well that that people in and around the club probably also knew as well. So when you've got issues like that and things are going on elsewhere, and I understand there's a lot of things that go on in terms of running a football club, and I'm just a fan sat here talking about what I believe. But what Barry's saying now, I fully believe in the fact that there could have been something better done here. You know, if they knew that a deal was not going to be put on the table, that's fine. You know, I disagree with that, but that's fine. It's the club's decision at the end of the day. I think when you've done that, the very least you can do is let her have a bit of a send-off and have some kind of... I know she's been away on holiday, and to be fair, I don't blame her. And I think there's a reason, you know, that when you're seeing the reaction today and the post that she's put out and everything else, I think it's a lack of respect, exactly what Becky's just said there. So I find this incredibly tough, and I have done I think if you go back and watch the shows over the last month, mine and Barry's expressions and the way that we've spoken about things, this is part of the reason in what we've been saying, because I was exactly this passionate when Vilda Risa was essentially shoved out the door last summer, because you've got another player that doesn't particularly want to leave and is pushed out the door. And I mean, this is a completely different circumstances, but in that respect. And then you've got this summer in the way that I think Katie's been treated. Well, I don't think it's not good enough to me. And if you treat any player like that, it's bad. When you treat your captain, and this is what I think has surprised people. This is a player that's played pretty much every minute under Mark Skinner since he's came in. Captain the side, as Barry said a bit earlier on, rarely dropped and things like that. And then to be treated, basically just cast aside, saying you're not going to be needed to not offer a contract. I know there was some talk online about an option. From what I understand, I don't believe that to be the case. It's not good enough from my point of view. And as I said, this has been... I know that there was reports this was undecided. This has been decided for a long time, at the very least 5 weeks. So if that is the case, there a lot more could have been done today, which is why I'm annoyed in how this has come out with just a single statement. That's essentially what it is. It's a statement. Keris, I want to come over to you a little bit in terms of, I guess, the players' reaction to this, because it's been very interesting and very telling, I think. That sorry, 2 seconds before I do come to that one. There was Yehuda obviously asked me this question. I just started for a reason. I hope I've just answered that in what I've just said there, in terms of my understanding is that she would not have left if she was offered a contract. So I hope that answers that one. And then Sean's comment about it fully. I genuinely haven't. One, because it's too hot in the UK right now to be sleeping. But also, yes, there's a lot going on around Manchester United at the moment. What is it you said to me, Sean? You've been in my company for 20 minutes and you're already stressed out. That was a comment. But yes, so there's a lot going on at the moment. But yeah, Keris, the players' reaction to this, it kind of ties into, it's kind of a two-question really, in terms of, I think every player has come out and pretty much mentioned her off the field, fighting for the, I think Tuni used the phrase in terms of fighting for the girls off the field. Melvin said it in her post as well. When I interviewed Fallon last week, I asked her about the FA Cup. She specifically name-dropped Katie Zelem and said how much she deserves it for everything she does for the players off the field. So it's very clear in terms of what the players think of her, in terms of how highly regarded she is there. What have you made of all that reaction then, in terms of, and how big of a loss do you think we're going to talk about her on the field in a second, but off the field, how big of a loss do you think this is going to be when you've got most of the players coming out and saying the same thing there?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? When you talk about, it's one thing talking about replacing a player on the field, because I know I'll be shot by Barry, but are there midfielders who are as good as Katie Zelem? Yes, but do they bring the same kind of specific abilities is one thing, but the same kind of trust off the pitch is entirely another thing, and especially when you're looking at your captain, I think that's the thing that's really difficult to replace. She's sort of seen by so many people as the heart of the team, and the fact that all the players have come out it's a bit like, when you see politicians tweeting or whatever, and they all say the same 6 words in their tweets. That's clearly what they've been told that morning. It felt a little bit like that, seeing off the pitch, off the pitch, off the pitch. But that no one is going to have told them that. That's just what they have naturally included. And I think, like you said, that makes it so obvious how much she's going to be missed by the rest of the squad. And I know we'll move on to potential other captains later, but it'll be really interesting to see just how they try to move on and replicate that leadership. I think will be really interesting.
Yeah, but there's a lot of comments, from loads of people. Just very quickly, but I appreciate all of your comments. There's so many. I'm literally scrolling back up now to try and get through to some of these as well. There's a lot of people obviously saying about in terms of how valued she's off the pitch. Becky saying that she's a real leader on and off it. That's kind of what I put on my tweet earlier as well. I think she's been underrated as a captain. You can say what you want about her ability on the pitch. I think as a captain, what she's done has gone massively under the radar. And everything I've heard about her in and around the squad and has now been backed up by the players in terms of what she does there. And I think that's, Mark saying that it'll leave a hole note. Is that your worry now? That on the pitch, maybe quality-wise, it can potentially be replaced, but what is being lost away from the pitch is potentially massive.
It's tricky to sort of answer that, really, because it's very multifaceted. I think, again, let's have it right. Keris is correct in what she's saying. It's not, and it never has been, about whether or not Katie Zelem is the best footballer on the planet. It's not. That was never the argument. It's just not possible to say that she was not a massive part of our football club. She was. And I think the problem is that everything she's done has always been understated and easily overlooked. People don't see what goes on behind the scenes when you have to be a footballer, let alone a captain. And I'm sure she has done a ridiculous amount of stuff. If you're the captain, it's your job almost to be the go-between between the management and the players. So if the players are whinging, you've got to sit there and listen to them and then try and find a nice way to put that to the leadership. And if the leadership are moaning, they're going to put it through you, because that's a nice way to get it through to the girls without it being just, the managers always having a go. So you kind of like that conduit between the two. And she clearly did that job brilliantly. The fact that, we've seen some players go and get absolutely nothing from the other players. And, there's barely a quiet person at the moment. That everybody understands and recognises what she did off the pitch. On the pitch, is she replaceable? Absolutely. There's not a footballer in the world that is irreplaceable. It's just not the way that football works. It's always gone. If you weren't replaceable in football, the game would have ended 100 years ago when the first generation of players went. So again, that's not the issue. And my issue going forward isn't can we get a football team that's capable, because we can, even just looking at the midfielders we've already got, working on the theory that Guerrero may not stay and that she ends up going, you've still got the likes of Grace Clinton, you've still got Miyazawa, you've still got Hayley Ladd, there's Lisa Nielsen. There's some fantastic players that we can put in that midfield. So, that in itself isn't something that I'm upset about. I do think we lose something, because I've always said I think she is our best midfielder, and that's because of the work that she did. She played in a position that she knew wasn't necessarily her best and favourite position, but she did it, and she did it for the club, and she never argued about it. She just did it. And she took all of the criticism that people wanted to throw at her, but 100% every time. You never really looked at her and went, Katie Zelem's not trying, because they did. Always tried. And that's because she led by example. So, she is ultimately replaceable because she has to be. That's how football works. But I'm not impressed, as I said, with how that's all occurred. It's just a little bit, again, it's just a disrespect. But off the pitch, can they fix it? Well, of course they can. May Laetitia is an up and coming sort of person. She seems to be quite opinionated when she needs to be, and is certainly, in my opinion, has always been future captain material. And I'm sure that's probably going to be one of your next questions, so I won't ruin that answer. Millie Turner is obviously one of the senior people there as well, and I'm sure that she'll step into those sorts of things. Hayley Ladd, as we've just mentioned, Leah Galton. There's plenty of players there who can be the voice, So is she replaceable? Yes, she is. That's never been the issue, and it's never been my drama. I just think she deserves a bit more respect. In answer to a couple of questions that people have thrown out there earlier on in the bid to make sure this doesn't just turn into an actual funeral, I don't have a court date booked in as yet. I'm definitely not getting married, but my great auntie's being buried on the 10th of July, if you care about that. So there you go. I'll throw that one in for you. That's a fact as well. You asked, I told you.
I should have won boiling laughing.
Why are you laughing? Indeed. Oh, hey, Auntie Jones dead. Yay. No, bad Connor. And as for this one, when Barry says OT is my church, he means the church of Satan. I mean, we are the Red Devils. So technically, you are correct. But I would just like to correct the record that I am absolutely not a Satanist. Religion has very little place in my life at the moment, but there's absolutely no way on God's green earth I would be. No, Ema, don't worry, I'm only joking. I'm trying to bring levity to a sad situation, and I hope that it has worked for you, Ema. I hope you're giggling there. She was a lovely lady, but she was about 90 odd. My God, there's only so long you can go on for, isn't there? We're all, just like Katie Zelem, we're all expirable at some point, aren't we?
I can't stop laughing now. I'm terrible in moments where you shouldn't be laughing. That's a laugh. Speaking of laughing, Becky put a great comment in a bit earlier on about fancy players of the family, the club behind the scenes, and the drunk god called what's around. That's a very good analogy. We like that one. Back to some of the more serious things before we go on to the next kind of question. Two very similar comments. Highland saying to blame Skinner for the transfers for a long time. There's no way he could have been involved in this. And then Lot followed that up saying it's interesting because this means Skinner had nowhere. As far as I understand it, Mark had no involvement in this whatsoever. So this was a decision above his head. So make of that what you will.
Well, if that's genuinely true, again, I'm going to use my saying that I've always said to you, Connor, you live and die by your decisions. And John Commode, if you remember him, he went off to America. He messaged me earlier and he said, that it was disgraceful, basically. And I replied with the same thing. Mark's going to make those decisions. And if he's made that decision, he will live or die by it. Now that you've said that's almost like breaking news for me. And that is... it's just questionable, isn't it? So when we go back to this whole transfer thing, who is making the decisions? It's almost like the Wizard of Oz. And in the end, it's just going to be some ginger bloke behind a curtain, isn't it?
I've seen that film.
Avram Glazer's not really dead. That's probably what it is. Just hidden behind a curtain, pushing buttons every now and again.
I'm happy I've seen the film, to be honest.
Oh, no! Connor, I'm having a bad enough day without you telling me you don't know what a munchkin is because you haven't seen The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, no, I have seen it. No,
Oh,
I have. I started it at school. Like, we did a play in like first
What
school.
part did you play? You were definitely the wizard, weren't you?
No. Oh, I
How did
auditioned
I?
for that. I didn't get it. No, I was one of the wizards, like the guards or whatever they were. Like, you know, with the hats.
Nice.
I was one of those. Yeah, it's I didn't get the wizard. I auditioned for the wizard. I didn't get it. Shocking.
I wouldn't bother auditioning for The Wizard of Oz personally because they'd only ever play me as a munchkin. I'd know, or the dog. Those would be my only two options.
Welcome to the channel, all you new viewers that are watching. This is what we do on it. Goes a little bit mad every so often. If you haven't already, make sure you like the video, subscribe, and all that kind of stuff as well. There's well over 100 of you watching, which is absolutely amazing for 3-4 shows on the trot now. So welcome to all of you, because I know for a fact there's some new viewers in here for the first time. Keris, back to Zelem on the field. Ella asked this earlier on in terms of who's taking our set pieces now. What are we losing on the field? Obviously, set pieces is the big one. Although we did see last season Gemma Evans stepped up for a few, and Tooney did step up on a few set pieces as well. But in terms of on the field, what do you think we're going to be losing?
I mean, I will just go straight in with free kicks, obviously. Corners, obviously. I don't think any of us will ever forget the time when in school when boys were annoying me that were United fans and were slacking off the women's team, and I would tell them that Katie Zelem had scored more goals direct from corners in like 3 weeks than the men's had managed just generally from corners in about a year. So those are the obvious ones. In terms of like on the pitch, I think it links to off the pitch, but her general sort of organisation, like communication, she's the link between, I think, the touchline and the rest of the team in terms of passing on those instructions. I think, to be fair, hopefully that's a relatively easy kind of thing to replace. I think we've got plenty of players that can fulfill that role. It's not like many of our girls are that quiet on the pitch. Like, I think we've got plenty of players who are vocal enough to fulfill that role. But yeah, generally, like, progressive ball carrying, I think, is something that a lot of people don't notice. I think a lot of people don't clock, because sometimes they don't come off, as they don't when you're trying to carry the ball a third of the way up the pitch through the middle. But that's something that she ranks really highly for in the WSL. Long balls completed as well is another one where I think she's up there in the rankings in terms of, like, she might not always be like, the last pass before the goal or even the second to last pass, but I think creatively she's at the centre of so much of what we do. Like, when you're looking at sort of our box-to-box movement, it's very rare that she's not involved in that at some stage. Like, she is that kind of typical central midfielder that everything goes through. And I think that is something that will probably be the biggest, like, one to replace.
No, for sure. And Barry, you mentioned it just a second ago in terms of she's played a position this season that I think we've all kind of said is probably not her strongest, playing that deep line midfielder that's probably more suited to maybe a Hayley Ladd in that team. As you mentioned a bit earlier on, she did it. She didn't complain. She played in that position and did it pretty solidly in most of the games last season as well. What do you think on the pitch? Obviously, free kicks and, well, set pieces and things like that, but also on it when we've seen her in kind of more advanced position as well in terms of what we're losing there.
Well, again, when I say that she was our best midfielder, I say it because she was our quarterback. She was that link between defence and attack, and sometimes between defence and midfield. The rest of the midfield, that is. The stats that Katie Zelem came out with year on year on year that were just not given the credit they deserve. She had numerous assists. She was capable of stopping passes. She intercepted more than many midfielders. She won more tackles than many midfielders. Her passing was better than many midfielders. She was right up there in all of the stat packs. And it's part of the reason why I just find it so fascinating that there are so many people around who didn't necessarily notice that. And I think that is the problem, is that when you take that away, is anybody else going to be able to do it? Now, if we go back to England, and I'm going to try and make sure I got the right one. I think it was the World Cup one where Keira Walsh got injured. That was the World Cup, wasn't it? And she got injured, and then we had a game, and Katie Zelem was the one who, needed to play. And when she came in, we had a great game, really played well, no problem. And obviously, Keira Walsh was back in as soon as she was deemed to be fit. If Keira Walsh didn't exist as a footballer, Katie Zelem would be playing for England week in, week out. And my argument to people there would simply be, well, she can't be that bad then, can she? Because you don't get into a Lionesses that is fighting for titles left, right and centre unless you are being kept out by an exceptional talent. And when that exceptional talent is Keira Walsh, that's a bit like saying, yeah, I'm not going to get in the team because Ronaldo or Messi or Mbappe, are in the way, or Pop or Mead or Miedema, these players that really do sort of whet the appetite when you're getting ready to watch a game of football. They're going to miss their leadership. That's massive, on the pitch, trying to get their heads up if something's gone wrong, if they've gone behind, keeping them calm if they've managed to take the lead so that they're not, losing it. All things that other captains can do, by the way. This isn't exclusive to Katie Zelem, but you're asking what we're missing from her. It's a job that somebody else is going to have to take on. And it's going to be hard, because all any person that comes to United has ever known in that position and with that captaincy is Katie Zelem. So it's going to be a brand new start, and it could turn out to be a brilliant one. It could turn out to be god-awful. But we'll wait and see. We'll see where we go. But her precision, it's been mentioned, set pieces, penalty kicks, corner kicks. Don't get me wrong, earlier on this season, I called her out on that. I said they weren't to the level that we usually expect of Katie Zelem. So I just think it's going to be very difficult to replace her. But I still maintain there are midfielders that probably can step in and do well. I'm not one of those weird people that is sitting here going, well, I hope Manchester United do rubbish this season just so I can prove how great Katie Zelem was. That's not what I want. We go on and win the league next season. Don't take this the wrong way, Zell, but I might be like Katie Who. Because, in the same way that I was with Jackie Who and Leslie Who, or Leslie Who, so to give her a proper name. Sorry, Keris. An eye roll there, and that's never good. When you get an eye roll, it's like, oh no. But yeah, so that's me. I'm going to stop rambling now, Connor. I'll ask another question.
I've only really got one more to go after this one, to be fair. But Becky also mentioned something that you picked up on there in terms of how well she looked after herself. I don't remember her ever being injured. I think she missed a game through suspension once. I think there was a time where it looked like there was rumoured to be having an injury, but she still played anyway. I rarely remember her missing a game through injury.
I've got to be honest, when you put that up, at first I thought we were going to go down the lashes and fake tan route. Then it was actually about the playing, so fair play.
So I think that's a good attribute as well to have. It's not an easy one to stay fully fit all the time as well. Potentially, I'm sure there was. She's definitely missed a game through an illness or an injury at some point in her United career. I just can't think of one.
In 6 seasons, I can't think of her ever. I can barely think of her coming off injured, let alone missing any kind of run of games through injury. I think you're right. I think maybe she was ill at one point. But yeah, High Lane's just pointed out when she collided with say against West Ham, and she just whacked a bandage on and kept playing. I mean, I think that not that that's necessarily the approach to condone with every player, because some of them should not keep playing in that situation, but it's the mentality, isn't it? It's great.
No, for sure. And I'll come back to you again, because my kind of final question, obviously, a big change that's going to be coming, obviously, is the captaincy. Now we know that we're going to have a new captain going into next season with whatever happens. NT's just mentioned there, captains of the club are usually injury resistant, especially considering the amount of games they both play. Now, I tweeted this yesterday. For me personally, I think there's two strong candidates I think that could take this, and that's Maya Letizia and Hayley Ladd. I think are probably the favourites if you're going to put some money down. bet responsibly if you can bet on this. In terms of the next captain, is there anyone you look at in that United squad that's potential captain material? The reason why I mentioned those two, particularly May Letitia, when you're talking about injury resistant and playing the amount of games they've got to play, Maya played every minute last season, so that's a player that could potentially do it. Hayley Ladd, as we know, that someone referenced earlier on, has already captained for Wales and seems like a leader as well, albeit she's not played as much last season. Do you think it's between those two for next season, or do you think there's anyone else? You know, Dave just mentioned Turner or Toon as well for potential captain. Who would you like to see, and who do you think it's going to be?
I think I would agree probably that those are the two front runners. I'd agree with you. I think Tooney, if you're sort of looking at it from an outsider's perspective, I can understand why you would want Tooney in the mix, because she's sort of, if you're talking about like players who kind of symbolise United women, she's obviously up there with Katie Zelem. But I think that I love her to bits, but I don't know that she necessarily has the same kind of leadership and communication on the pitch in the middle of a game, because she's so busy always thinking about her own game and trying to, not that Katie Zelem wasn't, but I think Ella Toon is so constantly like thinking about progressing and attacking that I think she would struggle to have the same sort of oversight of the entire game that Zelem did. So that's why I wouldn't have her personally. I think that out of Ladd, and yeah, she would be Roy Keane vibes. I think out of Hayley Ladd and May Letitia, I think they'd both be great choices, to be fair. My only kind of concern with May would be that she's still so young. I mean, like, she's 2 years older than me, so if she becomes captain of my football team, then I really am going to have a bit of a quarter life crisis. But you know, I think she's good in terms of consistency. We've mentioned in terms of attitude, in terms of like leadership on the pitch. I think she's definitely grown into that a lot over the last couple of seasons, and I definitely agree that she would be a future captain. It's whether she is ready to be captain now. I genuinely don't know. I'm not saying she's not, but I think she is still very young for that responsibility to be put on her shoulders to be a lot. Hayley Ladd, on the other hand, has got that like captain's experience with Wales. I know she's doing a UEFA license, so like she's got a great understanding of the game. The issue is then she needs to play, which obviously I think we will see more of her with Zelem leaving, but it's kind of a bit of it's whether she's had enough playing experience in the last year with the current squad to then have kind of the same trust and influence from the other players as a captain. Genuinely don't know. I think it's one of those that, to be honest, should probably go to the players a lot of the time. I'm not saying like, you know, direct vote, but I think that that's something where the rest of the squad's opinions need to be sounded out in terms of who would be best.
No, for sure. And it may be the case that they go down similar routes to the men's did in terms of having a club captain. You know, Harry Maguire was that and rarely played when he had the captaincy. Obviously, in terms of you have your club captain and you're on the field captain, because as Sporty's saying there, is it possible they split the role on field and off field in terms of club captain? That's kind of what I was referring to there in terms of whether they go for a more experienced player as that off the fieldy kind of person that deals with all of those issues off the field and things like that. And then you have your on the field captain that could be slightly different. Barry, where do you think this could go? There seems to be the same four names. I don't think we've had anyone. I think we've had Tooney, Turner, Ladd, and Letitia so far as the names mentioned for potential captaincy. Do you think it is those four, or do you think there's anyone else that potentially you were looking at? So again, same question. Who do you want it to be, and who do you think it will be?
It's interesting. Who do I want it to be? Katie Zelem, but I can't have that option, so I'll have to move on from that. Yeah, I think it's a really tricky one. If she stayed, there's an argument for Mary Earps. You know, if she gets another contract, if that was signed, sealed and delivered, then, you know, she would absolutely be an option. I'm not sure Gabby George would necessarily... I'm never a huge fan of a captain being somebody who's only recently sort of arrived. You know, she's had one season, most of that being injured. You've got to have the respect to your teammates. And I'm not saying that she doesn't, but... you know, you need to have gone to battle with them. You know, you need to have fought with them and be in the trenches. And at the moment, she's unfortunately been in the medics tent for too long. She's not seen much battle. So she's going to need at least another season. And that's a similar thing with what Kerry says there about Mayo, it's a great point. She is quite young. That doesn't change her demeanour and how she is. But again, she is quite young. And, you know, when I first got into teaching, you know, that was one of the things that I always found quite interesting as well. You know, if you've got older teachers, you found it difficult if you had to tell them what to do because they're older than you, ultimately. And so it feels a bit odd telling these people that are older than you what to do, and that can be tricky. I'm sure she's got the mentality and the mindset to be able to do that, though. Millie Turner's a great shout as well, as is Ella Toon. I've seen someone put Leah Galton, which is a perfectly reasonable shout as well. But the one that I'm thinking of, providing she stays, and I have no reason to believe she won't, I would almost go for a sort of a hand-in-hand sort of captain, vice-captain thing. I think this season I would go with Rachel Williams, potentially to be the captain. She's got all the attitude that can be required. Granted, she's not going to play necessarily as much, but having a Rach and a Maya Letitia team, well, let's be honest, no one's going to have a go at Maya whilst Rach is about. She'll bop them with a blaster's trowel. So that's no dramas whatsoever. But leave Maya alone. She's not going to muck about, is she? I'm not in a porter cabin either, because that's easy. So, yeah, I think that's where I would go. Potentially Rachel Williams. Any of those names mentioned have been a good one, though.
No, for sure. And a name I do apologise, Vic. She did say Hannah. Hannah Blundell is potentially another option. Again, experience, when you talk about experience and things like that. Lucy backs it up. I think Chris also backs it up. That Blundell is potentially an option. And again, to be fair, this is where I go back to. It depends what the club. There's a lot of people saying Blundell now. Becky's with you though. But I think this is where it comes back to in terms of what kind of captain do they want. Because if it's a club captain, absolutely, I think Rachel Williams is that player that, you know, maybe doesn't play all the time. When she does, she's captain. But then you also have like a Maya Letitia, for example, who is likely to play pretty much every minute, who is your on the field captain. Because I said there's two different, and it's why I would avoid maybe like a Tooney or a Turner, whether they can do all of that. Because there's a lot that goes, especially a Man United captain, everything you do off the field, you are basically the middle person between the players and the board in terms of doing all of those things, raising all the concerns, doing those meetings, doing all those things, being the representative for the club. There's all of that, and I don't know whether Toon and Turner are those types of players. They probably could do it, but I don't know whether they would be the ideal and whether they'd even want to do that, you know, whether that's even what they would like to do. Some of these players we've mentioned might not even want that extra responsibility. I think Galton's a good shout, but I don't think she's a player that would maybe want that on her shoulders as well as playing as well. So there's some fair shot. I'm really intrigued, you know, in terms of what's going to happen here and what route United go down, because I think there's some really good shouts for who it could be. So I'm just scrolling back up some of these comments. Obviously, Gabby George, I can't see it being her either.
I can see Gabby George in, like, you know, several years once she's had more experience playing for United. She's got those United roots and clearly absolutely loves the club. But I agree with Barry, you can't make someone a captain when how many games in did Gabby George get before she tore her ACL? Not her fault, obviously, in any way, but like, I think you can't make someone captain when they've played a handful of games before them being out for the rest of the season. As big a presence as I think she probably is off the pitch and will be hopefully on it when she comes back, I think you need to see her play with the squad a lot more before giving her that like leadership role, or it just doesn't feel like a natural fit.
Yeah, and it's the same reason I wouldn't give it Fallon either, because I feel like, again, somebody who's not played enough yet in the team, albeit very well liked and everything else in and around the squad. And to be fair, I'm never a big fan of keepers being captains. I would rather it be your centre-back or midfielder.
A lot of people talked about, like, I think Mary probably, if she was staying, I think Mary would be definitely up there. Purely because you talk about talk about a keeper being captain. The difference is that you can hear Mary from the Lee car park, so like that's not really a problem. But I think, you know, she would be a very vocal and very like good leader. The problem is obviously it does not look, if reports are anything to go by, it looks like she is going. So that's the issue.
And let's be honest, we don't really need a captain, do we? We've got a queen coming, so. It's got to be higher than a captain.
As has been referenced quite a few times. Do you know what's crazy as well? There was a load of people watching the TikTok live I did earlier that were commenting exactly what you referenced, Barry, with the whole Queen Liz thing and everything else. I cannot
Queen
believe
Elizabeth III.
this has now become a thing. Yeah, it's been referenced quite a few times in the chats this afternoon as well about. Can't wait if we sign turn up from Brighton. Rach Williams turns strikers.
That would be a lovely combination. Like that.
Cannot wait for the potential there. Yes, you can. Absolutely.
Do you know what? I'll tell you my favourite sort of anecdotes. I always kind of figured you could just hear Mary really clearly because with Lee, with the best will in the world, it's like, it's less than 10,000 crowd. And then I was lucky enough to go to the World Cup in Australia, and I was at the final, and I was relatively near the goal, but this is like a sold out 100,000 capacity stadium. It's like, oh no, okay, I can still hear her. Like, I literally don't know what that woman had done to her lungs, but she is like the loudest shouter in the entirety of football. So yeah, she would be great for a captain from that perspective. Someone said, like, what about her talking to the ref? The ref can hear her. Like,
No, absolutely. So yeah, I think she would be in the conversation. Unfortunately, she is leaving, and we will get that announcement in the next 2 days. I'm pretty certain of that. So there's a little spoiler for you for those of you who are waiting for an announcement that is coming definitely in the next 48 hours. My last question then: if you've got a favourite Zelem moment in terms of, we've mentioned a couple of the Olympicos. Obviously, the FA Cup final can be one. We could go for the ghost handball that kind of hit her head, but it was given as a handball when that one against Reading all those years ago. What else can we go for? I'm trying to think of other Zelem moments. Scoring at Old Trafford, I'm sure, is a highlight for her as well in front of fans. There's a lot there. Do we have a favourite one? You could go for a personal one as well if you want as well.
Go on, Keris.
I was gonna say Barry can go first. No, I'll go for a semi-personal one, which was her first, the club's first WSL goal. I'm pretty sure that penalty against Liverpool. So that was, I think, my second time at Lee Sports Village, because I didn't tend to go as much when we were in the Championship. So that was my second time at Lee after the Arsenal game. And my mum took me. She'd never been to Lee before either. But I, begged her to take me because we were playing Liverpool. And it looked like it was going to be another 0-0, and it was really disappointing. And then she had this penalty, and it was right in front of me in the last few minutes, and it was pretty straightforward. But I think what it signified was so massive. Like, for her to literally like kick off our WSL campaign like that, that's definitely a moment that I remember really well, and that one will definitely stay with me.
I mean, Barry Sandell was mentioned a couple one as well, the assist against Arsenal at the Emirates that led to the pandemonium that away and there.
Mine come from very sort of personal ones in that respect. So, yeah, the 3 crosses for Arsenal when, again, I was lucky enough to have my phone out at that time and be recording those things because obviously that you were doing your match day vlogs at that time, Connor, and, we were very lucky there to get those. And obviously that ability to the now infamous 7 minutes being added on just as the ball gets crossed onto a Leslie Husso's head for her to get the winner. Brilliant moment. The Olympicos were amazing as well. I remember watching her score against Man City and then just deciding to do it again, 2 goals on the bounce. And it was particularly great because when you stood in the crowd, she scored the first one and we were like, wow. And then we got another corner. It was so close afterwards. And I just remember all of us being stood there at the side going, shoot! And she did. And then she scored. And I watched the video you put out of that. And I just remember wishing, actually, that you'd still had the end of that second one in there. Because I'm sure you would have just had, just disbelief and laughter as we're all just like, how the hell has she done that? That's 2 goals from the same position. That's almost unforgivable if you're the goalkeeper. And then, of course, I've never said this one, I don't think, live on the channel, but the one time that I was lucky enough to actually meet her. And, you know, there's a lot that gets thrown out about us as a channel, and I know that people always do that. But sod it. I said I'm me. I'm not a person that puts on a facade. I'm going to take a moment to say thank you to Alan Zelem, because when I was first just a young up-and-comer on the YouTube scene, whilst I was just that, when John and Connor were the two looking after it, or Jonna, as I like to call them at the time, they would often
Never say that ever again.
All right, Jonna Kebab. When Jonna Kebab was in charge of AFU, and I was just doing the fans forums, and there was just a nice moment where John Foster came up to us and went, "Do you know, Alan Zelem likes looking at you. He thinks you're funny. You make him giggle." I'm like, "Oh, that's nice." And, you know, I do try to make people laugh, because I just think, what is life if you can't have a laugh? And that really stuck with me, because the thought that anyone likes anything I've got to say is pleasant. You know, most people think I should just shut up. Connor's thinking it now, because he said it was going to be less than an hour, and we've only got 4 minutes, and it's not going to be. But but genuinely, he's just such a nice bloke. And there was a place I was going with this, because it's a Katie Zelem memory, not an Alan Zelem memory. And I had the opportunity to get a photo with her at the end of the season. And she came, and there was a couple of other players, and I got their photos with them. No problem. Just like, "Thank you very much. That's lovely. Cheers." And Katie Zelem came over, and I was like, I'm going to say something to her, because she is my favourite, and I want this to be a tiny conversation rather than just, you know, "Can I have your photo with you, please?" Which feels weird as it is anyway. And of course, she came up like, "Oh, Katie, can I have a picture?" She's like, "Yeah, no problems." And then I fangirled. Now, I've interviewed Peter Taylor. I've interviewed professional footballers. I've done 1,000,001 things. And I literally just went, and I quote, "Your dad thinks I'm funny." And bless her, at that point, she could have looked at me and said, "I don't want a photo with you, actually. You're a psycho, bugger off." And she didn't. She just went, "Do you know what? If you can make my dad laugh, you can make anyone laugh." And that's Katie Zelem for me. She's just a brilliant human being, and I will genuinely miss her.
No, for sure. I'm glad you mentioned that, actually. I knew as soon as you said you've never said this, like, I knew what story was coming there, because I love that. I love that story. Yeah, there's been so many good comments in the chat. A reaction to Rachel's goal. Obviously, the Adobe FA Cup caught that brilliantly. Her reaction to that. A lot talking about the Olympicos. A lot talking about one for me. I know, Croonie, you said it was a corner. It wasn't quite a corner. It was very near the corner flag, though, but it was a free kick. Definitely for that one, the Villa, because that made me believe that we were going to go on to win the league. That moment. When
I think me and Connor have spoken about that moment before, because I watched that from my uni flat of 10, and the reaction that I think I had when that goal went in, and some of our mates were around, they were like, they literally came into the kitchen, they were like, "Are you all right?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm great." Like, what? How are you? they were like, "We were genuinely concerned." That was really loud, but yeah, that was definitely another moment.
No, for sure. So I think there's things there, and I think just overall, I think the Olympicos was definitely a moment. Winning the FA Cup, I said before the FA Cup final, I wanted to see Zelem lift the trophy and have that moment with it. So definitely that. Obviously, me on a personal level, getting her medal for a photo was insane. And a memory, I tweeted this earlier, and obviously, Alan, massive thanks to yourself. If you are watching this back, that was definitely a moment I will never forget, because I never thought there'd be a time I'd be holding a Manchester United winners FA Cup medal. That was ridiculous on that one. So that was quite something. So yeah, I think it's I think we'll round it off there, because we did say we would go for about an hour, and I think Barry has got a poem, hasn't he?
The people asked, I tried my best. Now,
have you wrote this while we've been live?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Which means it's probably not my finest work. It probably needs redoing, because I tell the children all the time, your first attempt is never the best, but I have edited it a bit because there's crossing out. So if anybody's watching from school, see, I edit as well. I shall do my best. A United girl at heart, United through and through. She always did her part, and brought others with her too. An MUFC OG from 2018. Now there's only 3, and this has caused a scene. But this is not a sad day. We must celebrate our captain. What more can I say as the ball goes in the top bin? A penalty kick and 3 Olympicos. 2 in just one game. And now we have to watch her go, and that's a bloody shame. The players loved her, so do we. She put this fine club first. She is the best we had for me, and for others, not the worst. She gave her all and did her best, and left with 2 shiny trophies. 1 to start, 1 to end, and a medal for Connor to please. So we had Zelem, Katie Zelem, I hope you understand. With lashes and fate and better than Zidane, we had Katie Zelem. So goodbye, Katie Zelem. You are one of our own. A legend, an icon, El Capitan, and yes, my United hero.
I don't really know. I'm not going to add anything to that. I'm just going to round the show. Make sure you like the video, subscribing, go in and following these 2 amazing people. I'm literally not going to say any more than that. And yes, Katie, if you do watch this back, and obviously the Zelem's family, you've been amazing to us, over the years and everything else on the pitch, off it, and your support for the channel. I tweeted this earlier, has been amazing as well. So yes, we are going to miss you, Katie. But yeah, we move on. We might be live literally in 24 hours time if United do another announcement tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. Thank you to you both. And yeah. Thanks to everyone in the comments, by the way. You've been amazing. So many of you amazing people tonight, and new people as well. It's been great to have you here. We'll see you guys in the next one.